we all know that saying, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. But, it's easy to say.
Oh, yeah.
Not as easy to actually do.
For sure.
But it really got me thinking after listening to this really fascinating conversation I heard on the EDP, the English Dialogue podcast.
Oh, cool.
Between these two really insightful people, Mike and Emma.
Okay.
And they really got me thinking about, just how often we kind of make these snap judgments about things and people and situations, and how, we're all about like kind of learning and expanding our knowledge here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how much are we missing if we're not really like getting below the surface?
Right.
So I wanted to like really kind of do a deep dive with you into this idea of don't judge a book by its cover.
I love that.
So what we're really talking about here is like, not just looking at the surface, but like really trying to understand the true nature of something.
Yeah, getting past those first impressions. The quick glance.
Yeah, and they were talking about how it's not just about people.
Right.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
Like an opportunity or a situation, or even just like picking a book to read.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a great point to start with because, I mean, we've all been there, right? Like you see a book and you're like, the cover's not doing it for me. But then maybe someone recommends it and you're like, oh, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, like I can think of so many times when I've almost passed on a book.
Yeah.
Because I just judged it by the cover.
Yeah.
And then like later found out it was like, a bestseller.
Exactly.
Or like everyone's raving about it. And I'm like, what was I thinking?
Totally. And that's why I think Mike's point about really taking the time to look deeper is so important.
What did he say about that?
He was saying that like the initial presentation, whatever that may be, whether it's like someone's appearance or the way something's packaged or marketed, it rarely gives you the full picture.
It's like, that saying about the iceberg, right?
Okay.
You only see the tip, but there's like this whole huge mass underneath.
And Emma was really emphasizing the importance of keeping an open mind.
Oh, yeah. What was she saying about that?
She was saying that we have to kind of resist that urge to immediately categorize things and people based on those superficial cues. It's like we have these mental shortcuts.
Oh, yeah.
That our brains use to try to make sense of the world, but those shortcuts can lead to some pretty inaccurate judgments.
Yeah, like stereotyping and stuff.
Exactly. And, we're not even always aware of when we're doing it.
Right, it's like subconscious.
Totally.
So then where did they go with that? Like, why do we do that? Like, why are we so quick to judge?
Well, Mike had this really interesting take on it. He was talking about how our brains are wired for survival, like back in the day, our ancestors had to make split-second decisions.
Right, like is that a saber-toothed tiger or a friendly dog?
Exactly. And so that instinct to quickly assess and categorize things, it was essential for survival.
But now, like, we don't really need to be that on edge all the time.
Yeah. Right. But our brains haven't quite caught up yet, so we still have that same wiring that can lead us to make these snap judgments, even in situations that aren't actually dangerous.
Yeah, it's like our brains are still in, like, caveman mode.
Okay.
So, like, that explains part of it, but I feel like there's more to it than just, like, our ancient instincts.
Yeah, definitely. Emma brought up a really good point about convenience. Sometimes it's just easier to rely on those mental shortcuts than to actually take the time to really get to know something or someone.
It's like we're all so busy and overwhelmed.
Right, exactly. And digging deeper takes effort, it takes energy, and sometimes we just don't feel like we have the bandwidth for it.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of a problem? Like, if we're always just taking the easy way out, aren't we missing out on a lot?
Oh, absolutely. And I think Mike made a really important point about how the world around us influences our judgments too,
Oh, yeah, like how...
Well, he was talking about how the media, the culture we're exposed to, even the way we were raised, all of these things shape our perspective and can create these underlying biases that we might not even be aware of.
Yeah, it's like we all have these filters that we see the world through.
Exactly. And those filters are shaped by our experiences and the messages we've received throughout our lives.
So it's like we're not even always making conscious choices about how we judge things. It's like these biases are just kind of operating in the background.
Right. And that's why it's so important to be aware of those biases, to really examine where our judgments are coming from, and to question whether they're based on reality or just on preconceived notions.
So, okay, so we've talked about why we make snap judgments, but like, what's the actual impact of that? Like, what happens when we judge too quickly?
Well, Emma made a really great point about how it limits our perspective.
Yeah.
If we're always just looking at the surface, we're missing out on all the depth and complexity that lies beneath.
It's like we're only seeing a tiny sliver of the whole picture.
Exactly. And that can lead us to miss out on some amazing connections and opportunities, you know?
Right, like maybe we write someone off as boring or unfriendly,
Hmm.
but if we actually took the time to get to know them, we might find out that they're actually really fascinating and have a lot to offer.
Totally. And Mike brought up the point that judging too quickly can also be really harmful, you know?
Oh, yeah. How
Well,
so?
he was talking about how when we judge someone unfairly, it can really damage their confidence and self-esteem.
Yeah, especially if it's based on something superficial like their appearance or their background.
Exactly. And it can also perpetuate negative stereotypes that have a ripple effect on society as a whole, you know?
So it's not just about hurting individuals, it's about reinforcing these larger systems of oppression.
Right. And Emma added that judging too quickly can create these invisible barriers that limit people's potential, you know?
Oh, yeah. Like,
Well, she was saying that when we label someone or something prematurely, we're essentially putting them in a box and we're not allowing them to grow beyond those limitations.
it's like we're putting a ceiling on what they can achieve.
Exactly. And Mike pointed out that this applies to situations as well, you know?
How so?
Well, he was saying that we might avoid certain challenges or opportunities because they seem intimidating or unappealing on the surface.
But if we actually gave them a chance, we might discover that they're actually really rewarding and
Mhm.
help us grow in unexpected ways.
Exactly. It's like we're closing ourselves off to all sorts of possibilities just because we're judging them based on our limited initial perceptions.
So, okay, so we've talked about the problem, but like, what can we actually do about it? Like, how can we actually train ourselves to look deeper?
Well, Mike had a really great suggestion. He said we should cultivate curiosity.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, instead of immediately jumping to conclusions, he said we should try to approach things with a sense of wonder and ask questions to learn more.
So instead of saying like, oh, that person seems stuck up,
Hmm.
we could ask, hey, what are you working on these days?
Yeah. Exactly. Or, what are you passionate about? Like, really try to understand their perspective and their story.
And Emma suggested that we should challenge our own stereotypes. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's a big one.
like when we find ourselves making a judgment about someone or something, we should pause and ask ourselves, where is this judgment coming from?
Right. Is it based on actual evidence or is it just a preconceived notion that I've picked up somewhere along the way?
And Mike talked about the importance of surrounding ourselves with diverse perspectives, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, that's so key.
like intentionally seeking out people and experiences that are different from our own.
Exactly, because when we expose ourselves to a wider range of viewpoints, it helps us to break down those mental shortcuts and to see the world in a more nuanced way.
And Emma brought up the importance of empathy, you know,
Hmm.
like really trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes and understand their experiences.
Yeah, because when we can connect with someone on a human level, it's much harder to judge them superficially.
And they both shared some really great personal anecdotes that really illustrated these points.
Oh, yeah. What were some of those?
Well, Mike talked about how he used to think one of his coworkers was really unfriendly
Oh, yeah.
because he was always so quiet and kept to himself.
Mm-hmm.
But then one day they ended up having a conversation, and he realized that this guy was actually really kind and had all these amazing ideas.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it just goes to show you that you can't always judge a person by their outward demeanor.
Totally. And Emma shared a story about how she almost didn't read a book because she thought the cover was boring.
Yeah. But then she ended up reading it. It became one of her favorite books of all time.
I love that.
And it just reminded her of how much we can miss out on if we let our initial impressions dictate our choices.
Absolutely. And, they also talked about the role of media and society in shaping our judgments, which I think is a really important conversation to have.
Yeah. How do they approach that?
Well, Mike pointed out how media often perpetuates certain stereotypes and presents a very narrow view of what's considered normal or desirable.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly bombarded with images and messages that tell us how we should look, how we should act, what we should value.
Exactly. And Emma talked about the impact of social media, how people often curate their online personas to present a very idealized version of themselves.
Yeah, it's like everyone's trying to project this perfect image.
Right. And it can be easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to these unrealistic standards.
And Mike made the point that this doesn't just affect individuals. It can also shape our perceptions of entire groups of people.
Right. Like we might start to believe that all members of a certain group are a certain way just because that's how they're portrayed in the media.
So it's like these media representations can actually contribute to prejudice and discrimination.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be critical of the media we consume and to seek out diverse voices and perspectives.
And they also talked about how we can encourage others to look deeper.
Yeah, what were some of their ideas?
Well, Emma suggested that we can lead by example, by
Hmm.
consistently approaching people and situations with curiosity and an open mind.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And Mike talked about the power of having honest conversations. Like if we see someone making a snap judgment, we can gently challenge them and offer a different perspective.
Yeah, sometimes just planting a seed of doubt can be enough to make someone reconsider their assumptions.
And Emma talked about the importance of sharing our own stories, like times when we realized we had misjudged someone or something.
Because when we share our own vulnerabilities, it can make it easier for others to do the same.
And they emphasized the importance of teaching the next generation to value diversity and to look beyond the surface.
Yeah, because if we can instill these values in young people, we can create a more compassionate and understanding world.
So yeah, this whole conversation with Mike and Emma really got me thinking about the power of that simple phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. It's so easy to just dismiss it as like a cliche, but there's so much wisdom in it.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that there's always more to people and situations than meets the eye.
And that if we take the time to look deeper, we might be surprised by what we find.
Totally. And so for you listening right now, I'd encourage you to take a moment to reflect on your own life. Are there any people or situations that you might have misjudged because you didn't take the time to look beyond the surface?
Because everyone has a story to tell, and everyone deserves to be seen and understood for who they truly are.
And think about all the potential connections and opportunities that you might be missing out on if you're not willing to give people and things a chance.
What amazing books might you be overlooking just because you don't like the cover?
You never know what hidden gems you might discover if you're willing to open your mind and your heart.
So go out there and explore. And remember, don't judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely.
And that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
Likewise.
See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.